And what is the best approach to the art of acting in order to achieve the greatest performance? Please explain if it has to do with channeling, which it may not. Is the actor channeling a person that is simultaneously existing in a parallel universe, or is the actor creating something new? Perhaps even a completely different and new person, new in regards to this plane that we know time to exist in.
We have to be cautious about the idea of your terminology when you say completely new. There may be an infinite number of combinations that are completely probable and possible for someone to bring through in a form of channeling, which is what the best acting actually is, in tapping into parallel reality versions that can be representative of the different characters, in the sense that you may be combining from different parallel realities and presenting a new character in that sense, in the new combination of tapping into different parallel realities to create that character. You could say, in a sense, that the character is new, a new expression, one of the expansions of the idea of how creation expands, because it's a new relationship, it's a new perspective, it's a new experience, but it's made out of a combination of things that already exist. And in that sense is not completely new, but it can be a new expression in the way that you understand that term. Acting on the level that you're talking about is channeling, although channeling is not acting.
Okay. And did Atlanteans live much longer than we do now? For example, the Sumerian texts refer to kings that reigned for many thousands of years.
Well, those are not Atlanteans, although Atlanteans did live longer in general. 120, 150 years is not uncommon for the Atlantean biotype. The Sumerian king lists have more to do with the idea of the Anunnaki and other extraterrestrial forms that did have, in fact, multi-millennial lives.
And were Atlantean aircraft balloon oriented, or did they use crystals to levitate or propel air, or by land or by sea?
It was kind of an odd combination of both in many cases. They did have lighter than air vehicles that were aided and assisted in their propulsion by the idea of vibrational means. So you could say, in a sense, that they used some of the science of levitation to move the lighter than aircraft around most efficiently.
And did the dinosaurs look the way we've interpreted them from fossils, or were they all furry or feathery or fluffy and just look like big animals and not terrifying lizards?
Well, again, some of them may have presented what to you would still be very scary appearances, regardless of the fact as to whether they had feathers and fluff, because they were still large animals, and many of them were carnivorous and predatory. So the idea is, yes, you are beginning to learn, as many of your scientists know, that many of them did begin to sprout the idea of feathers, hence those branches evolving into what you now have as birds. So the idea is still much of what you understand now in your modern times is relatively accurate, though you still have a lot to discover about them. So even though some of them may have had fluff and feathers, they still were formidable animals.
Okay, and can you talk about our moon and the origins of how it was created and came to be?
Your scientists are relatively accurate in the idea that the early Earth, when forming, was struck by another body in your solar system, and the moon, in that sense, was material that was broken off in the impact, and thus reformed as the moon around your planet in a natural way. Now, the moon is natural and formed that way, but it has been slightly altered since then, because there are extraterrestrial bases on the moon and devices on the moon that have placed it exactly and precisely into the orbit it now occupies to help balance out your planetary system in a variety of ways. So it's not that the moon itself is artificial, but it has been artificially augmented to some degree. But originally, it is a natural body that was formed in the early solar system.
Was it in that sense moved so that it would be this exact size, like for eclipses and things like that, that
Yes.
it,
Now, we understand that the moon is moving and has been closer to your planet in the past, and it is still moving slightly away. Nevertheless, certain adjustments have been made so that at the timing that humanity would exist and at the timing it would be relevant for you, the size of the moon being where it is in position relative to the sun and your Earth is not an accident.
so are there more advanced ET civilizations that know how to move planets in a sense and move things like the moon?
Absolutely. There are civilizations we have encountered that have the power to move stars.
And are they physical? Or does that require being a non-physical consciousness to comprehend that?
It does not require being a non-physical consciousness, but it does require a connection to non-physical consciousness to understand it in a very strong way.
Is it on the level of beings such as yourself, or would it be of beings that are even more advanced and higher frequency than you?
We do have the beginnings of the ability to do what we just said, but there are beings that are much more advanced that can do it very easily.
And does that also fall under the idea of terraforming planets?
Well, yes, that can be done, as was done for us. But terraforming a planet is not quite the same thing as moving a star for a variety of reasons.
Yes. And isn't there a thing with terraforming that it's not necessarily the idea that what is involved in terraforming a planet for species such as yourself? How did they terraform your planet?
It requires molecular adjustments on many different levels and fine-tuning with very advanced technology for the purpose of creating the atmosphere and environment that would be conducive to the expression of life planned to live on the planet. We cannot go into technical detail at this time. It is too large of a subject.
Okay.
But suffice to say, it involves an extremely advanced form of nanotechnological manipulation.
Well, just to take it a little further, did they bring animals to your planet, or was it more the idea that they evolved?
Some were adjusted genetically and allowed to evolve. Some were brought to the planet and mixed into the ecosystem where compatible. But that's not the idea of physically terraforming a planet. That happens later when the planet has been terraformed and is ready to receive the idea of life.
So even higher beings are into gardening, is what you're telling us.
On scales so vast, it would try your imagination.
Wow.
There
So,
are literally gardens of stars, gardens of solar systems.
wow. See, there's always more. Consciousness has that one thing going for it. Doesn't matter how long you exist. There's always more.
Yes. Though it is not something that we ourselves can do, there are also artistic arrangements, if you will, gardens of multiple dimensions. We have heard of this from those that have experienced it.
So at some level, this becomes one amazing amusement park in a sense.
If you
The
wish to look at it
exploration.
that way, it becomes one expression of beauty.
Okay, if light and the absence of light is used to describe the essence of God, which has been used by many teachers, then what about the polarity of positive, negative, and the corresponding neutrality, and God being both positive and negative things?
Yes, it is. As we say, it's a trinity, positive, negative, and neutral in the middle. It's not really a duality, it's a trinity.
So the manifestation of at the of positive and negative is part of all linear reality. Is that correct?
Yes, and even some nonlinear reality, all the way up to all that is and including it. Remember, it's a reflection. The only level that experiences none of it is the one that has no self-awareness. As soon as you have the all that is that experiences knowledge of itself, awareness of itself, you have the reflections that automatically create the idea of positive, negative, and neutral. It exists on every level. It's not experienced the same way on every level, but it exists on every level.
So what happens to the parallel realities that we leave? Is there a version of a person and the people that they care about that are suffering when someone shifts to another parallel reality and apparently disappears?
No, because there are still things going on in that reality. It's just that your perception has changed. Your point of view has changed. You're looking through the eyes of someone in a different reality. But there is still always a version that is relevant for that reality that allows it to continue in the way that it needs to continue. It doesn't mean that every single individual always has a version of themselves in that reality. Sometimes they do appear to disappear, oxymoronically. But the idea is that whatever is relevant for that reality continues forward. Now, if someone leaves a reality in the way that you mean it, and someone in that sense misses them, and that's what you're referring to as suffering, well, that happens all the time in your reality anyway. When people cross over, they can be missed. You don't have to suffer for it, but you can recognize that they are no longer in your world in the way that they used to be. So that happens in your reality anyway.
And for this person's asking for clarity, source is both existence and non-existence. Is
No,
that correct?
no. Non-existence doesn't exist by definition. There's no such thing. It's a concept that you've created within existence, but there's not actually any such thing as non-existence, because by definition, non-existence doesn't exist.
Right. And when you say wake up in the new earth, I expect myself to wake up tomorrow or after a nap, and everything will look different along with the presence of ET beings. Is that really going to be like a subtle shift with another layer, or is it just a completely different reality when that happens, or does that even happen?
Is always a completely new reality, whether you recognize it as such or not. Shifting through a subtle variation of different realities, one subtly different from another, doesn't mean that you're not shifting to a completely new reality. You're just doing it subtly over time as a process. So it can happen instantaneously, depending upon whether you eliminate the need for experiencing the process of shifting through multiple versions of Earth that are only subtly different from one another. It can happen instantaneously if you're willing to experience something or are ready to experience something that quickly. But for most of you, it will probably be a subtle process. But we simply remind you, any shift is actually a total shift. And when you actually wrap your mind around that more fully, then you might experience more of an acceleration in the way that you experience the idea of shifting. Because remember, it's something you're already doing. It's not something you have to learn to do. You just have to recognize what it is you're already doing. But you also have to allow, without insistence, the idea of any process necessary in that shifting that may be appropriate for what it is you chose to experience in your physical reality.
Okay. And a lot of people are having dreams about ETs. What are
Yeah.
some of the purposes of this proliferation of people having ET dreams?
Well, it may be representative of more contact taking place in the astral realm or spirit realm when you are asleep, thus as a precursor to the idea of open contact. It may also sometimes be memories starting to flood back into your mind of contacts you have already had, which again can also be a barometer that you're getting closer to open contact. So it can be either, and it can be both.
Back in the 1800s, did people dream about ETs back then, or is that
They did, but they didn't necessarily recognize them as such.
so they
They may
might thought they were
recognize
spirits?
them as spirits, they may have recognized them as elementals, whatever it is that they were using as a terminology back then, they did have those experiences, but they may not necessarily have recognized them as extraterrestrial beings, nor called them such.
Okay. And can you provide us with advice on how to make fear disappear from our lives? This person says they often find themselves crippled in fear, especially due to the ideas of the unknown and mystical things.
You have to watch your definitions. That's what creates the idea of fear. Remember, fear is your energy being filtered through belief systems that are out of alignment with your true vibration. And that comes about when you believe in definitions that don't work for you. So the idea is to understand that fear is your friend, telling you you have a belief that's out of alignment with who you truly are. So make fear your friend by paying attention to what it's attempting to tell you. It's knocking on your door saying you need to discover what this belief system is that you are filtering your energy through because you're taking yourself out of alignment, out of harmony with your core frequency. And when you find out what that belief system is, that fear-based belief, that negative belief, that irrelevant belief, then you can realize by looking at the rest of the world that comparatively, it's a nonsensical belief. You don't have to hold on to it. You probably picked it up from someone else and thought you had to hold on to it, but you don't. So you need to let fear be your guide to discovering beliefs that don't work for you so you can let them go. And when you do that, you will not be afraid of being afraid, because being afraid will simply be a temporary sensation that's simply for the purpose of bringing your attention to a belief that you can now recognize as something that doesn't work for you and let it go.
And how can a person apply this that's, let's say, in a war zone or has attracted an experience where they are being held hostage or any of these kinds of what we would normally think of as pretty terrifying kinds of ideas?
Again, it's about the idea of understanding why you may have attracted that in the first place, because it's not always about the idea that something is negative within you to have created that experience. It may be that you are willing to aid and assist those that have perpetrated it upon you, to be a reflective guide for them to learn to change. So you have to understand on a case-by-case basis why you are experiencing what you are experiencing.
So if you have the recognition that you may be in that situation in order to help mankind in a sense by bringing certain things to light,
Yes,
by fully committing your physical body to an experience that would
yes,
not be something.
yes, because sometimes that can have profound effects. It just depends on what state of being you bring into that circumstance and how you respond to it.
So similar to somebody like Gandhi, who was in a situation like that for many, many years. He
Yes,
was
similar.
able to maintain a positive attitude regardless of what he was going through
Yes,
physically.
yes, similar, but even more so.
Wow. Okay, and let's see. This person is acting after having a traumatic dream last week. My higher self told me that my vibration was being adjusted for my contacts. Is that message true? Is this a tactic to adjust my vibration? It was very exciting and fun in the aftermath of the dream, but of course during it, it was terrifying.
Yes. And again, remember, many of you work things out in your dream state so you don't have to experience them in physical reality. Would you prefer to experience the trauma in your physical reality? Usually you will say no. So sometimes you realize that if a lesson needs to be learned, sometimes you will allow it to happen in the non-physical state, in the dream state, so that you don't have to experience it in the physical state.
Okay, and then this person is asking, another person is asking, how do I stop suffering? I've been dealing with depression since last year. I've had highs and lows, and although I'm way better today than it was a year ago, the suffering exists and persists. How can I stop my suffering and the suffering I cause to others? I'm being the closest possible to my true self and improving every day, but this person's still experiencing suffering.
All right. Well, again, what we just said, you need to really authentically, honestly examine your belief systems about yourself relative to the circumstances in your life. And you need to allow yourself to let go of the beliefs that don't work for you. And you need to stop defining things in a negative way. As we have talked about many times, depression is the result of defining a withdrawal into the center of your being in a negative light. Whereas what you're actually experiencing is compression, a natural form of withdrawal to go within to look for answers you cannot find in the outside world. That withdrawal into yourself to find those answers does not have to be defined in a negative way as if something is wrong with you. So stop defining the experience in a negative way. Then you can start experiencing it in a more positive way as self-assessment, self-realignment, self-awareness, letting go of negative definitions and negative beliefs so that you can emerge as a new person that is now the product of the freedom of letting go of those beliefs that don't work for you. You will stop suffering when you stop resisting your natural self. All pain is the result of resistance to the true self. So stop resisting being your true self. Find yourself worthy, find yourself deserving, and act like the creator you are in creating your reality by determining what definitions and what belief systems work for you and which ones don't.
And perhaps this next question actually illuminates some of those ideas, like the idea of FOMO, fear of missing out, that many
Yes.
people experience in social media, as well as things like feeling like they've missed the boat, those ideas.
Yeah. That's the paradoxical, oxymoronic truth of that situation. The only way to miss out is to spend time worrying that you're missing out. That's how you miss out. If you don't focus on the idea that you're missing something, then you can relax into the current, into your flow, and let your life unfold in the way that it needs to, trusting the way that it unfolds and allowing synchronicity to guide you and bring you what you need. Fear of missing out is the way you miss out. That's the paradox.
And that's filtering your energy through a negative belief, which is going to create suffering because you feel like you're missing out.
Exactly. And
Instead
then it
of being,
reinforces itself. It
it's,
reinforces itself with the feeling as if that's really going on. It's a fact. I feel like I'm missing out. I think I'm missing out. I'm now going to behave like I'm missing out. That's the negative belief simply reinforcing itself so that it appears real and factual, when in fact it's nothing but a projected illusion of consciousness because you have a belief that it is true. That's how beliefs work. So understanding that and then realizing that the paradox is you will miss out by fearing you will miss out can stop you from having that fear and relaxing into the understanding of how things actually work and letting things work for you, allowing them to work rather than trying to make them work through your physical mind's ego structure. Because your physical mind's ego is not designed to control things or make things work. It's designed to allow you to have a clear physical experience. That's all it's designed to do. So you have to allow your higher mind to work with you and guide you and bring you what you need, because it will happen automatically when you stop being afraid that you're missing something. That's how you miss something, is being afraid that you're missing out.
And the higher your frequency grows, the more captivated you are by whatever is currently happening in your world, in your reality, and
Yeah.
that is the most important thing to be experiencing. And just assuming or the negative idea that you're missing out will cause suffering, that belief right there.
Becomes incomprehensible to hold on to the belief when you have enough momentum of existing in a higher frequency. It simply can't occur to you after a certain point that such a belief would be something you would choose. You may be aware that it's a possibility, but it would be nonsensical to choose it. It simply doesn't make enough sense for you to actually experience it.
And lastly, just going back to the idea of the glass walls that we see through and the negative and positive realities that we're aware of.
Yes.
What is the difference between being in denial? Let's say you are in a situation where your physical life is threatened
Yeah.
and you're recognizing that you're in a quote unquote negative reality, so to speak.
Yes.
And if you just say to yourself, oh, well, I'm just looking at this through a glass wall, it doesn't really
You
relate
have to
to.
be honest. As we always say, you have to be authentic and honest. You know when you are authentic and honest with yourself and willing to really deeply look within, you know the difference between excitement and anxiety. You know when you are going into denial and when you are seeing things clearly. You know the difference at that level, but you have to be honest about what you believe to be true. You have to know what you believe. You have to be transparent to yourself, just like the glass wall.
So basically the idea, just like it says in the formula, you want to stay in that positive state no matter what is being presented to you. You know you're eternal. You
Yes.
know that you will continue to exist no matter what, and that your best potential outcome of any situation is if you can stay in that balanced state where you are giving positive meaning to whatever is happening.
Yes, but that
And
doesn't mean you're calling negative things positive things. It means
okay.
that for you, you will get a positive benefit if you stay in a positive state. But that's not a state of denial about what's happening. You can even acknowledge, all right, I may have attracted this into my life, but I've attracted it for a reason. How can I learn from this? What positive experience can I gain from the fact that I've attracted something that I vibrationally don't prefer that might be vibrationally negative? You have to be honest and willing to take responsibility for the thing that is happening in your life. That doesn't necessarily mean it's always a one-to-one reflection. We'll be talking about this in the next transmission called reflections, because many people on your planet are very confused about the idea that just because they've attracted something that may be negative into their lives, they think it always means that that exists within them too. That's not what is meant by reflection. And so we will illuminate that idea in the next transmission.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much. We're in challenging times, and so we so appreciate your balanced and the formula itself, what it can do to
Yes.
give you a positive experience on
And
Earth.
when you say you are in challenging times, we assume that you mean that that's fun.
Sure.
All right. So we thank you for allowing us to share this day of your time. And now please allow yourself to relax into the understanding that it is 1 minute to midnight, children. Tick tock, tick tock. Allow yourself to relax into the following transmission.